Welcome to Perpetual Motion, a podcast for lifelong learners who share my passion for ongoing personal growth by improving their communication skills, relationships, finances, and wellness. I'm your host, Dr. Mo Anderson, and my guest today is Laura Finney, a financial professional, speaker, and entrepreneur. Laura frequently hosts professional workshops and seminars to continue helping individuals and businesses grow and achieve financial security. Financial security. It is possible. And if you want to ensure your family's financial future like I do, stay tuned. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you, Dr. Mo. Glad to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. This is a topic near and dear to my heart. And I know you're just the person to bring us information that we can use and start using right away to ensure our families have a better future. I think isn't that kind of the goal overall for people that each generation you want to do a little better?
That's right. That's right. We all say it, right? I want my kids to do better than I did, or I want to, take care of
Yeah.
nieces and nephews better than I was. So absolutely. I hear it all the time.
Right. And you say it, but what are you doing about it? Which is what we're talking about today, because those are two different things. It's
Yes,
kind of
we
like
want you to
my
do it.
workout program. Laura, let's start with your passion for teaching others to protect their assets. You shared with me something that happened to your family around real estate that was not protected. Would you mind sharing that story again?
Yes, I would. It is my number one why as to why I'm in this business when it comes to uh, educating financial literacy and education and what that really means and looks like. And I grew up in the south suburbs of Chicago, the youngest of 7 children. And we have a very large family. My mom and she only had 2 brothers, but they had large families. So, it was a big group of us as families, always around each other. Having a lot of fun. Back in those days, grew up with nieces and nephews, like 17 of them, and they even went to school with me because my mom had me late in life. But then my granddad, he had about 17 acres. They migrated from Mississippi and, he bought all that land, him and his brothers, and he had about 15 acres or so. And a good portion of it was farmland. And
Mm-hmm.
he grew vegetables that supplied the local markets. And that's how he made a living. So he would provide vegetables to the local markets for the community to buy and, live and eat off of. I remember being out in them fields and, we mentioned something about shucking corn the other day and someone said, I can't believe you know what that word means. I was like, yeah, that was the best
I
food.
know what it means.
Yeah, we know what that means. And then when I was 19, my granddad got sick. He had bone cancer, and my mom took
Hmm.
care of him day in and day out. And she encouraged him to get the will because he didn't have one. And he said, I believe you and your brothers can handle it. And after he passed, they couldn't handle it. They couldn't agree on what to do with the land, although it was already decided, why the land was built anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And why he had that there. He had built a concrete home on it, and we had horses and pigs and chickens, and so that generation didn't want to deal with that. And so my mom took over paying the taxes on the land, which was really just a few $100s back then, and it was in the late 80s, mid 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom passed when I was 24. And at 24, I didn't know anything about, the legal side of what, what should be happening. But none of the older adults in the family took over paying the taxes on the land. And we lost it in a tax sale.
Mm.
And, every time I go home, I drive by the land and just see it overgrown. And, it sparked a little nostalgia, but also a little anger and frustration as
Right,
to
right.
why, because being as young as I was, I didn't understand why the family couldn't come together and make that happen. And then about 3 years ago, I went home and the land was gated off. As a matter of fact, it was like miles of land gated off. And, when I drove past the area where I could see my grandfather's house from the road,
Mm-hmm.
as I got closer, it had been completely developed. And sitting on that land was an Amazon distribution center.
Ooh.
And it's
Ooh.
there today.
Ooh.
All
That's some
because
multi-millions right there. Wow.
Yeah, and it hurts to even talk about it because I still think about of all the adults in the family, no one could make the decision to pay that few $100 a year, regardless of what the others were doing. At least it maintained until we could
Right.
sort through the legal aspect of it. But that's where my passion come from is, educating people enough to know that if you leaving a legacy for something, then put the documentation in place to make sure those things happen the way you want them to.
Wow, that's incredible. There's so many lessons, just right there from, even, and you see that a lot, particularly with undeveloped land. They tend to fight over the homes, more, but when there's acreage and maybe just, more land than home, which is a really good situation to have. I've actually acquired property through tax liens, and the people who are doing that, I mean, are not evil or anything. It's property that's available that was legally, you know, taken back because taxes were owed. So I just think about when we say we own something, a lot of times people don't understand, even if your house is paid for or your land is paid for, if you don't pay taxes right, it's the government can take it back, right?
And they will.
And they will. And let it sit there for years and do nothing with it but take it from you. That's the wild part about it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
Yeah,
tough. It's
I
still
can
tough.
imagine. I can imagine. Well, let's just dive into that a little bit more, the legacy part that, we started out talking about. Let's make sure we level set first, that everyone understands the term financial legacy. What does that mean, and why is it important for individuals and families to consider?
Legacy is literally by person. Each person has their own definition of what a legacy means to them. For example, I have a really good friend who lives in Austin, and she's married but doesn't have any children. And I brought this up to her, what does legacy look like to you as a person who
Mhm,
doesn't have children? And she said, what I work for now goes to, my nieces. I really want to take care of her when I'm not here or give her that leg up. And I think for most people, that's what legacy means, making sure those future generations have some
mhm,
sort of leg up. It doesn't mean a handout or leaving lump sums of money to people, but it's making sure that that money can stay, that you worked hard for, can stay in the family for generations to come if you position it right. It's not about passing on lump sums of money to people and expecting them to do right by it. Because I do have clients and situations where parents want to leave their adult children, certain things, and the kids are like, I don't want it. I don't want it. I have my own things. I don't want that. Uh, but everybody that I know wants to leave something to someone and provide something that they worked hard for on to the
mhm.
next generation.
And I think too sometimes those, uh, younger people who say they don't want things also need to be educated on the value and why you might want this. I have some books by authors. I'm an author, and I started out 30 years ago. Some of those authors have gone on to become New York Times bestsellers, win these really big awards, and I have some of their early books that are signed. And so instead of just having books on the shelves, I made sure my boys understand, look, some of these are first editions, some of these are signed books. When I'm gone, don't just come in here, all mama's old books, I'm gonna throw these away. Yeah, I think there's an onus on us as well to educate them. And if they still just throw them away, that's on them. But we've got to ensure that they understand the value of property, of land, of things that might not aesthetically be appealing to them, but can help them along the way.
You nailed it. You nailed it. You have nailed it. That is it. Because again, with this generation, be it my generation or my daughter's generation or my grandkids' generation, they don't want our things.
Mhm.
And if they look at it as things, then they have no value. But like you said, if we educate them on why this is valuable, it may not be of interest to you, but here's the value it brings, with you. I have a really good colleague that I work with. She put a value on her home that from the day she passes away, that home cannot be sold for 100 years.
Wow. Wow, that's in her will.
It's in her will and her trust that that home cannot be sold for 100 years from the date of her death.
That's smart. That is
I have
really
never
smart.
heard that before. But again, you live and learn about, again, what does legacy mean? It may not be something that her children want, but maybe her grandkids. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's
And
about educating people on what it is that you've worked hard for or what you've collected and why it has value and can be of value for future generations to come. Absolutely.
so do you recommend wills and trusts as vehicles for maintaining this financial or preserving this financial legacy for your clients?
Absolutely. It goes without saying, it's step 6 in our 6-step process. It's
Hmm.
step 6 is protect wealth. And by protecting wealth, having the wills and the trust in place. I had a call yesterday with a client, single, recently divorced, and her daughter is 11. And I said, first of all, the insurance company isn't going to pay her a lump sum of money. And then when she turns 18, you don't want her to get a lump sum of money because they don't know what to do with it.
Right.
Because I have clients, I tell them, you're the only thing that keep me up at night. Are you not having these wills and trusts in place? Because you're doing, I think, more of a disservice because they don't know what to do with it than helping them out. By
Hmm.
having the trust in place and that be the beneficiary, it tells them what to do with that money. So you
Hmm.
might give a stipend to someone, or you may not be able to sell that home for 100 years, but the funds are there to make sure the taxes are paid on the house and things like that. People don't understand, when we look at some of the most famous people these recent years who didn't have wills and trusts,
I
and
know.
and
It's
it's
incredible.
they have the best advisors money can buy, and yet their family are in court for years. And that costs money. It costs a
Yes.
lot of money to be in court to claim what you believe you rightfully own, when I'm sure that that wasn't their intentions when they were out making all that money. But yeah,
Right.
avoiding the trust, it's a short process to go through, but man, once it's done, it's done. You don't have to do it again unless you just want to make some changes, but it's not that hard to do. It's not that expensive, and it'll let your assets be secured the way you want them to be.
What what are what are the reasons that your clients give you? I mean, I've had a will since I was in my early 20s. I've updated it every few years, but I know so many people who don't, either because they think, "I don't have enough," even though, they're working, they have a home, they have a car, they have insurance, or they just somehow don't have time. They've got time to go off to Cancun and everywhere else, but they don't have time to do a will. These are the reasons that I see that I just don't understand, because I've seen so many arguments and so much dysfunction when mom and daddy died, just siblings who loved each other so much, and now they are just tearing each other apart over
Mhm.
a Honda or something, and it's heartbreaking. What is the psychology or the financialology? I just made up a word.
I like that word.
Behind not having a will. And is there a cultural thing? Are there some cultures that are more inclined, or is it a mindset? That's a long question, but I'll be quiet now.
I think it's both. I think it's both. I think it's a culture thing and a mindset. I mean, when we look at our community, the Black community, I mean, look at what happened to me. My grandfather had it all there. He didn't make hundreds and thousands of dollars a year. Uh, he had all that land and they brought it, and, he made a life for his family on it. And
Mm.
he thought his children, who all got along, would do what he asked them to do. And it didn't happen. And so that's number one, is that we assume, and I share this, and that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked me that. One of my very dear friends, we're having this conversation, and she has her best friend, who's her daughter, and she's in her 20s, still in college, as her executor of her estate. And I said, well, why would you do that to her? She doesn't have the experience. Who knows what she will be like 10, 20, 30 years from now. Is that
Mhm.
fair that you would make it happen that way? And then, so you have that end of the spectrum where people still are leaning on children to make legal decisions
Mhm.
that they're not qualified to make. Number one, even though it might be written out. And then number two is to not have it, as people don't think they have anything of value. But somebody has to clean your mess up. somebody has to clean your house out. Somebody has to,
You're
donate
right.
your clothes. Everybody has to do something when you're no longer here with all of your things.
Mhm.
And that leaves it up for grabs. When I think about, um, I went to a funeral maybe 20, 30 years ago, and this woman, the house looked like it was a Black Friday sale, and everything was free with the family.
Oh
In and
my.
out, coming out with furniture, I'm taking this, and I mean,
Wow.
literally like the date of the funeral.
I've seen it. Yeah.
So it happens, and that's the important thing, is that at the very least, if you just put it in writing, at
Mhm.
least you've done that part, and that way the family don't have to make those decisions on your behalf.
Wow. Wow.
Hmm.
Good points. Good points. Thank you for sharing that. What are some avoidable mistakes you've observed in your clients' efforts to build a financial legacy? Those who are trying to do it, and a lot of us don't have financial literacy, either weren't taught or just didn't grasp it, or just haven't been exposed. What are some mistakes that you see that could be avoided?
The number one thing is doing nothing.
Mhm.
That's the number one. That's the biggest mistake you can do, is nothing. And then on the other side of that, I see people um, do something, and then it's like they walk away, and I don't need to do anything else. My Social Security will be there, or,
Mhm.
I'll get to retire. Most people don't think about what they get up for today, except for this month. Got to pay the bills. I may be planning a trip or vacation or some
Mhm.
outing, or, we live day to day or plan for, like you said, Cancun trips, right? But nobody is thinking about, when I get up 10 or 15 years from now, what lifestyle do I want to have and live? And it doesn't mean you'll be sitting on the porch with a glass of lemonade and a rocking chair. Most 70 and 80-year-olds are still thriving and have desires to do other things.
Right.
But most people are not planning for that, because the mindset and the psychology is that I just have to get through today. And even with people who have financial plans, I have a really good friend. She's in her 50s, and she told me she had a financial advisor since she was 24 years old. But I get a statement once a year, and I ask $1 million question. So when you stop working, what do you want to do? What position do you want to be in when you no longer have to work? What would your life look like? And
Mhm.
she says, well, I've never been asked that question before. And then I said, well, then how do you know how much to save? And she said, well, we've always been told, earn money, save, put it in these accounts. And, when you get ready to retire, it'll all be there. I said, oh, so they didn't talk about inflation and, protected money. And, maybe you need 7 to 10 grand a month coming in every month when you don't have to work to maintain your lifestyle. So
Mhm.
how do we get there? And then we work backwards from there. But that's the biggest misconception, is number one, not doing nothing. Number two, not really having a plan and really talking about what that looks like. Most people will go to, YouTube or find a guru to follow, but I tell them all the time, I like the idea that you're looking to do something. That's
Mhm.
really good. That's smart. But now you have to do something to personalize it for you,
Right.
so that you can get exactly what you want and not lose money along the way that you can't regain back.
Right. And everybody's needs are different, their assets are different, their
Yeah.
goals are different. So like you said, it needs to be personalized, customized for their life. And I think a lot of people do assume that, you know, most of us think, okay, I'm going to downsize a little bit, but we still kind of want to live the lifestyle that we have. If we've been traveling, if we've been eating out or whatever, and to really think, what is that going to cost me? And will I have enough? Because Social Security, girl, I just got my statement. I was like, oh, well,
But here's
and
the
I,
thing,
I have
on
been working
somebody's
hard paying into
website,
the system. Yeah.
it says on their website, within 11 years, 2035, that fund will be exhausted.
No.
It's on their website. And here's why. When we look at the years where we were growing up and we had jobs,
Hmm.
there were 45 people contributing to the Social Security fund for every one person that retired. Now that number is 3 to 1. So there's only 3 people putting into that fund for every one person retiring. And
Mhm.
now with the era of gig work, nobody's going to be putting money in that fund.
I hadn't even thought about that. And boomers, my generation, 10,000 of us turn 60 every
Mhm.
day, and we are, the millennials are the largest cohort in the workforce, but as far as retirement and needing the Social Security, and the government keeps talking about tapping into it, it's just really, really scary if that's your plan.
Yeah.
Is that I'm
And
gonna
it is
get
their
it
plan.
checked from there.
It is their
G
plan. I spoke with a young lady that I went to high school with. It's Life Insurance Awareness Month. Next month it'll be breast cancer awareness month. All of these months are relevant to financial planning. They really are, because if you get hit with something that's going to affect you financially, how can you be prepared for that hit?
Mhm.
And she's my age. We went to high school together. I had posted something on Facebook about GoFundMe isn't an insurance policy,
I
right?
saw that. That's a good post. Yeah, I saw that on your page.
Oh gosh. And she reached out to me, and she lost an aunt, a mother, and and a niece all in 12 months. So
Oh,
now
that's
at
tough.
57, she wanted to get coverage for herself.
Mhm.
Um, and she now has Graves' disease, and she also has COPD.
Wow, so she's got pre-existing conditions
She has
and
pre-existing conditions. And, part of leaving a financial legacy is you being able to live and enjoy your life all throughout that process of getting there. That's
mm,
that's the first thing, right? Is to
sure, sure.
enjoy and live your life to the best of your ability. But the one thing you don't want to do is be a burden to someone else who may have to take care of you later for some unseen medical issue. And we all could face it. No, none
Mhm.
of us are exempt from having a medical issue tap us out. And tap us out mean that we can't go to work, right? Or we
Right.
might need some help cooking or whatever for 2 or 3 months. But whatever it is, it's not you being able to live your best life at that time. So, what are your options when that happens? And for her, it was like, I really don't want to leave my daughter in a bind. And even
Mm.
though her daughter's an adult, we don't think about what our lives could be like 10, 15 years from now. And I tell everybody, I put most of these things in place so that I know I can still take care of me, like a will and a trust. We talk about having living wills and they speak for you when you
Right.
can't speak for yourself. Well, I'm
Mhm.
speaking for myself now for 30 years down the road. Because
Right.
as much as I love my daughters, they can barely remember to go get what I asked them to bring me back while they were out at the mall or the store. God forbid I need medication help. But then most importantly, families are not natural caregivers.
Right.
They have lives and, you know, families of their own, and anybody would be willing to help if they
Mhm.
had to help. But when you're talking about leaving that legacy, it's also putting yourself in a position where you can get the care you need and know that that money that was set aside to go down to the next generation, or that asset, will
Mhm.
still be there, and you didn't have to sell it off to pay for your care.
So does that include, like, for insurance, looking at, disability policies as well?
Sometimes
Given if you have that
disability
option?
policies are there. I'm working with a young lady right now. God bless her heart. She's 31 years old and have 10 policies. I said, okay, we're going to fix this. But I like that you did something, but we're going to fix this. And one of her fixes was having a disability policy. She's a mental health counselor. And but the disability that she needs is, they call it non-tangible work, right? Meaning that it's
Mhm.
not really physical. She won't break her arm or something like that because it's work related. But now so many policies have what's called living benefits that you almost don't need separate policies in that way.
I see.
Some may, it depends if you're an airline pilot or, you're a welder, maybe.
Mhm.
Like you said, everyone's situation is different, but for the average person, you can probably get away with not having a disability policy with a lot of riders that are included in regular life insurance these days.
Okay. Okay. Wow.
Mhm.
That was a good discussion. I learned some stuff. I'm making notes here as we're talking. That's my favorite part of doing this podcast. It's just a
Education is what we do.
educational, intellectual tourist learning and sharing. I'm all in. So
I
this
like
is
intellectual tourists. I'm sorry, but I got to write that down.
go for it. Go for it. And while you're writing, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but I want to make sure we cover it. How can individuals adjust their financial legacy plans? Say you have a plan, you've implementing it, you're working it, and then the unexpected happens, such as job loss, a worldwide virus, health issues, economic downturns. How do you adjust it without destroying it?
Get in touch with the person that put the plan in place
Mhm,
and let them know that there's been some changes. I reach out to clients, at least 2, 3 times a year to see if there's been any changes. Many times, if there is something that happens, we need windows, or like you said, I'm out of work for a year because of the virus. What can I do? Many of those plans had benefits or flexibility that allows you to have a break. I got an email from Nationwide saying, hey, if the clients are under hardship because of the recent floods in Florida, they don't have to pay their premiums for 2 or 3 months, right? So
mhm,
insurance companies are now a little bit more, and investment firms are now a little bit more flexible when it comes to helping, because they don't want people's policies to lapse or for them to lose certain benefits. But I think many times people just get, one, embarrassed that they're in that situation, two,
mhm,
desperate because they feel they need the money, whatever that premium is or whatever they're saving, putting away. But you never stop. You can't. That's the fun for later. It's like putting the mask on you first,
mhm.
because when that time comes where you'll need that money and it's not there, or you'll need that benefit and it's not there, then it just opens Pandora's box. But
Gotcha.
one thing you can always do is talk to the person that put that in place. And you should probably reach out to them a couple times a year anyway to make sure that they're still there.
Mhm.
I've had clients where a woman's son, um, their company closed down and got rid of all the agents, and she thought the policy was still in force. Unfortunately, um, her son passed away of a disease a month after his policy expired.
Wow. Wow.
So he couldn't even get care when he was in a terminal state, which would have been covered under the type of policy he had, but she didn't know. We put these things in drawers and we forget about them.
But weren't they making monthly payments? I mean, you don't really get a policy paid up. Where was her money going?
Yeah, good question.
Oh,
Good
Lord.
question.
Mm,
Good question. It's
okay.
unfortunate, Dr. Mo, that you have a lot of transactional business in the financial services world, and transactional doesn't help people. It just gives them a solution for right now. But when you're working with someone who's going to work with you on a real plan, then now
Mhm.
you've built a relationship, and that's who your go-to person should be.
Okay. I'm getting off track now. I had a light bulb moment. I didn't know I needed to check on these companies now. Uh, granted, because I'm in corporate healthcare, my employer, we're dealing with some pretty big companies, but I have, some things on my own as well because I never put all my eggs in one basket. I think that's
Mhm.
another mistake people make because
I
they let
do.
people go all the time, and then Cobra is a whoo, Cobra is a bear. But that company was no longer in operation, so I need to be checking. How do you check on financial services companies, insurance companies? I mean, the website could have still been up. I don't I just realized I don't even know how to do that. How do you check and make sure that they're active? Is there a rating like AM
There
Best
are.
or
So there's a couple things. Number one, it's unfortunate, but whoever put your plans in place, you should have a business card and be able to reach out to them. That's the first thing. And
Mhm,
then you just ask them, I just want to take a look at my plan, see how it's doing. I get these statements, what's happening now. should I make changes? And, here's where my life has been and here's where I'd like it to go. Do you have any suggestions or recommendations? That's number one. Number two, to check the status of an account is not the account, but the company rating.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you have to do. All of the companies I represent, over 150, are all A+ rated companies. And what that means in a sense is, under our brand, these company has to have 2 or 3 of the amount of the coverage in reserve for every single account out there. So if your account is a $100,000 account, then they have to have 300 in reserve specifically for yours. So if they go belly up, your account is still okay and protected. And that's how you can find out what their rating is,
Okay, but with who? Like, I know Dun and Bradstreet, Moody's. Who they're rating with whom? What is the organization that rates them?
you can check with Moody's. The other one is the S&P. They'll be ranked
Okay.
on there as well.
Okay.
And you can ask even Google, as much as I hate saying check Google, but it's probably the quickest way to ask what is the rating of, let's say, a nationwide company. Are they A+
Okay.
or B-?
Okay.
And you definitely want to have, in a relationship with A+ or A++ company.
Gotcha.
That
Good to
that
know.
secures your financial security right there, to know that you're dealing with someone that's really reputable and that their financial stability, that's all that rating means, is the financial strength of that company.
Okay. One more question. We're getting short on time here. I've just rambled. You just got me all excited about going and look at my financial legacy plan now. But
But
for
that's
our
what you should do. That's what you should do, and that's what we're here for.
trust and believe. Final question before we talk
Okay.
about your wonderful products and services. Study after study shows most of us do not save enough money for retirement or long-term financial security. We talked about this a little bit as well, but what are the key factors individuals should keep in mind when planning for their retirement and how they can ensure they're on track to meet their retirement goal? Now, I know you've said you need a good relationship with your planner, but are there any other factors to consider?
First and foremost, save more now. Save more now because you're in your income earning years now. Some clients will start with, well, I just want to save the bare minimum and then I'll pay, save more when I make more. And that's fine for people who are in that financial position.
Mhm.
But to ensure that you are on track, and, it always goes without saying is, live below your means, right? Live,
Right.
live below your means, but plan for how you live. If you like going out once or twice a month with friends and, going to events and things, you can plan for that. But in order to make sure that your financial plan is going to be stable and get you to where you want to be, like number one, like you said, don't put your eggs all in one basket. But most importantly, to make sure that you're consistent. Remain consistent with your savings, because that has to come first. I can't tell you how many people I have to cut their dining out bill by a third. And that's an extra $400 or $500 a month that we can kind of put in this bucket if you stay
Mhm.
out the drive-through.
Wow. Wow, that's significant. $6,000 a year. That's pretty significant. You don't need the rule of 12 or anything to figure out. You could do a lot with that. You can do a lot with that. Well,
You can,
before
and people start to penny pinch as well. You start to pay attention more when you're in the good habit of saving and you have your financial future in the forefront of your mind.
Mhm.
You start to think about when you're spending more money. You're like, no, I can't go out this weekend. Maybe next weekend.
Right.
You
Really though, maybe I will use my Instant Pot and cook and eat that chicken and rice for 3 days so that I can I can continue eating
Exactly.
chicken
You'll
and
never
rice
know the
20
difference.
years from now.
Yeah, repurpose the meal. Repurpose the meal.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hey, tell us about your you mentioned some of your clients and I'm sure you're just great with them, especially if you're reaching out 3 and 4 times a year. I'm gonna have to talk to mine. As a matter of fact, I'm making a call tomorrow. But tell us about your coaching practice, your books, and how folks can get in touch with you, Laura
Oh
Finney,
gosh.
Finney.
Yes, yes. I love what I do. You heard it in the beginning where my passion for it comes from. It really is about the education piece, not about a transaction, because I don't know how I can help people until we've sat down and really understood what it is that you want. But what we do is we start with the financial literacy, and that's asking just a lot of questions about where you are now, where do you want to be, 3 years from now, 7 years, and what retirement looks like for you. One woman said, I just like to go fishing. I said, well, where would you like to go fishing? She said, oh, up the creek, down the road, around the corner. I said, well, what if you can go on fishing journeys, like in Florida or in other parts of the
Nice.
country or the world, and having people think a little bit about dreaming bigger and what they can really have, and then show them how to get there. And having the stability of the companies that we do represent, from the Nationwides and the John Hancocks and the Vanguards and the Fidelities, all of these companies are individual to me as a broker, because now I'm not married to any of them. What I'm married to is getting my clients the results that they want, so that when their time to retire comes or take off work, or if an emergency happens, not have to worry about anything for 6 or 7 months. That's what gives me probably the greatest joy right now, is knowing that I did right by them in that way.
Wow.
And then the book, the Entrepreneurship Journey. So all of us have a little bit of a bug in us. Mine existed probably since I was 19, and writing term papers for college students and getting paid. That was probably the biggest thing that made me realize I'll probably never be employable, for the rest of my life. But I did have a career for a time. But at 50, I realized how much I didn't know about money.
Mm.
I saw what happened with my grandfather's land, but it wasn't enough for me to sit down and figure out how not to let that happen to my children. And it wasn't until I was 50 and my cousin sat me down and said, hey, what are you going to do when you retire? And I was like, well, I don't even know what that looks like, but let's talk about it. And so from there, she was explaining all of these different scenarios. And I was like, why don't more people know about this, especially women?
Right.
Women have a longer longevity of life than men, but we have poorer health than men. And that's probably because most women are caregivers to a certain degree. And we end up with some health issues. But having that passion of wanting to help and educate people, but then really want to like dig my teeth in the conversations with women about what we can be doing now, be your own brand name, right? I like a
Yes.
good purse, but I don't want to fund their kids.
Exactly. Advertise for them for free
I just
after I
don't want to
paid
do
for the product. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. I believe to each its own. I don't know how expensive a product is until I go pick it up and look at the price tag. It's not because it's a name on display. It's because, oh, I like that item. Oh, maybe I don't like that item that much. But maybe I can find a different version. But there are some things that in life is just part of our lifestyle, and that's okay. But meanwhile, let's just plan to make sure that we're not just living for today, that we can have some money set aside for 5 or 10 years from now to still live that lifestyle.
Beautiful. And the book is available where?
My book is called The Entrepreneurship Journey. It's 11 short chapters. I think it's like 57 pages in this book, but it's bite-sized pieces on things entrepreneurs, no matter where you are, if you're in the early stages of, starting a business, or you're a seasoned veteran, it's the
Right.
tools and tricks and trades of the business as an entrepreneur that we should be focused on, that many of us sort of overlook because we're in the business of running these businesses and building this legacy to happen for
Right.
us, and then we forget about some key things that can hurt us down the road. But they can go to Laura Finney Enterprises, and I think my name is there, and that's enterprises with an S.net,
All
N-E-T,
right.
Laura Finney Enterprises.net, and the book is there. So I hope that they'll, get interested and pick it up.
Absolutely. LauraFinney.net. We will
Laura Finney Enterprise. Yes.
LauraFinneyEnterprises.net. We'll be sure and drop that in the show notes so they can go right to it and learn more about you. This has been wonderful. And I already know I need to have you back so we can do a whole show on living beneath your means, living within your
Oh,
means, not beneath, but living within your means. Because I think a lot of people don't get that a bunch of credit card debt is not living within your means. So,
that's just
I,
kicking the can down the road.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Laura, thank you. Thank you. This has been informative and interesting. Thank you for sharing your expertise, your personal story, and thank you, listeners, for your time. I hope you enjoyed the show and invite you to subscribe, like, and tune in each week. Until next time, be well and be safe.